Hi everyone, we're going to talk about how to set up for a golf shot. This video is going to cover the grip, posture, ball position, and how to aim. And I'm going to give you some tricks and some tools to help you with each of those components. But before we get to that, if you're enjoying this free content, help by supporting us. And the way that you can do that is when this video is over, please like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment. Okay, so as I mentioned, in this video, we're going to talk about the grip, we're going to talk about posture, we're going to talk about ball position, and then how to aim. And historically, these have been called the fundamentals of golf. And I actually politely disagree with that. And the reason is if I take you this week, the PGA Tour is at the Travelers Championship up in Cromwell, Connecticut. And if I took you up to the driving range right now, what we would see is we would see guys who grip it differently. Some stand bent over, some stand very upright. Some play the ball a little more forward, some play the ball a little bit more back. And then some aim right, some aim left, some aim straight. So since the best players in the world are doing it differently, is it really a fundamental? And I would disagree with that. One thing that is definitely a fundamental in golf, and I've talked to it at length in other videos, is hitting the ground in the proper spot, definitely when we're hitting a ball off the ground. Remember, driver's a little bit different. So the first element I want to go over is the grip. And the most important thing about the grip to me when I'm teaching people is that you have to have one. If I don't have a grip, I'm not playing golf. So there's a little bit of leeway there, and the reason that I say that is we look at guys like Jordan Spieth, Paul Azinger, come to the top of mind, Dustin Johnson, that have different sorts of grips, but I would take their playing record any day of the week. So when I go over the grip, I do teach probably 20 to 25 people a year that have never touched a club before. And so I'm putting the club in their hand for the first time, so I've got to have some sort of baseline that I like to work around. And that's what I'm going to share here with you. The most important thing, or the next most important thing about the grip, is that it matches your pattern. So I see people with a very weak grip. That would be both hands turned towards the target, but they have it in a very nice position at the top of the backswing. I see people with very strong grips that would be turned away from the target, both hands. And again, the club's in a really good position, or it could even be a little open. So just because I have a weak or a strong grip at address does not mean that that club is going to be weak or strong at the top of the backswing. A lot of things can change, and that has to do with how I'm using my wrists in the backswing, which I have plenty of videos about that if you're curious on that. Okay, so let's get into what do I like to see. And I'm going to do this right-handed, even though I have a left-handed club in my hand. So I start with the left hand, and one thing about golf versus other sports, so if I was holding a tennis racket, I would hold it in my palm. If I was holding a baseball bat, again, the bat would be more in my palms. We grip a golf club a little bit differently, and the way we do that is we grip it more down in the fingers. So when I close my hand, the V that I create between my index finger and my thumb should point right of my chin, and I'll take it as far right as your right shoulder. Don't want to see it outside your right shoulder. Now my right hand very simply comes in and covers the thumb. And if I look down again, that V between the index finger and my thumb on my right hand points to about the same spot. It's right of my chin and can go as far right as my right shoulder. Now within golf, there's 3 different ways we can grip it. So the first one would be the 10-finger grip. That's where I have all 10 fingers touching the grip. The next one would be the interlock grip used by such players as Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, most of us know those names, where the pinky finger of the right hand interlocks with the index finger of the left hand. And then there's what we call the Varden or overlap grip, and that's where the pinky of my right hand just sits inside the index finger of my left hand. So a drill that I give to my beginning students who are working on their grip, or if at any point in your career your grip gets out of whack and it's time for a grip change, and I have a saying at my golf school, change a grip, lose a student. But if you need to change it, I have what I call a regrip drill. And what you do is you just take a club, and wherever you watch TV, you drink your coffee, you put the club right there. And when you sit down, you pull the club over, and you put it right up in front of your face, and you get your left hand on there the right way first. Then you put your right hand on, you grip it, and you put it down. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. So the next time you go to the golf course, your hands instinctively go to that position. Now, one last thing we need to talk about that gets asked at my golf schools, probably every school that I teach, and that's going to be tension or grip pressure. And I have one that I really like for that. So I want you holding on to the club. Obviously, I can't grip it so lightly that the club, especially hot, Florida in the summer, your hands are sweating. I don't want the club to come flying out of your hands. So the way that I get rid of tension is I'll have a student hold a club up to me just like this, and I'll walk in and I'll start pulling on the club or on the grip towards me, away from them, and usually it's a wrestling match. There's a lot of tension, they're resisting me. And what I get them to do, or what I want to see them do, is create greasy elbows or loosen those elbows up. And as soon as I do that, you can see the tension in my hands disappears as well. So those greasy elbows, and if we remember some of the old-time golfers, Lee Trevino, Sam Snead come to mind, Chichi Rodriguez, when they would step into a golf shot, they would actually pump their arms just a little bit. And it was getting rid of that tension. It was creating those greasy elbows that then there was no tension in your hands. So one thing you can do as you're watching this video, I have one more thing to talk about when it comes to tension or pressure in your hands, is go ahead and stand up. I want you to hold your hands, both hands out to your side, and I want you to clench your fists as tight as you possibly can. And I want you to drop them. And what happened? They drop very slowly, very mechanically. Now I want you to go up there, I want you to shake it out nice and loose, and I want you to drop. And what'd you hear? You could hear it on me, the slap. You could hear it as you did it yourself, the slap. Well, guess what that is? That's speed. What do most students that come to me want? They want to hit the golf ball further. Well, to do that, we need to create more speed. Am I going to create more speed with tension, where I'm swinging the club very mechanically? Or am I going to create more speed by shaking it loose, getting those greasy elbows, and you can see how those arms instantly start to swing faster. All right, so everybody's good with their grip. Now we're going to move on to posture. And what I like to see in posture is an athletic motion, or excuse me, an athletic position, because golf is a sport. It's not a game. Even though people call it a game, it's a sport and it requires an athletic movement. So I need to get in an athletic position to create this. And when I say an athletic position, what I'm talking about is feet shoulder width apart, or I like to use hip width because it's easier for me to see my hips than it is my shoulders. Little bend in your knees, and then your hands under your shoulders. And I'm going to give you 3 checkpoints with your posture here in just a moment. I'm also going to give you a drill to get into good posture each and every time. So from down the line, again, I got my feet about shoulder width apart, hip width apart, little bend in my knees, and my hands are dangling from my shoulders. The biggest difference in golf is I'm bending from my hips forward, almost like I'm going down to pick up the golf ball or to touch the club head. And that's different from other sports, but that gives me the orientation towards the ground that I can move these arms and the club underneath my body with some power. All right, so let's look at the 3 checkpoints that I look for when I'm teaching a student when it comes to posture. So the first thing is, as they set up, I'm going to make sure that their hands are right underneath their shoulders. The next thing I'm going to look for is that there's adequate spacing between their hands and their body. I don't want to see the hands in here. I don't want to see them way out here. So as those hands are dangling, adequate distance between the legs and the hands. And then the last thing I look for is I want to see the feet right underneath the ball of the hip joint, which the ball of my hip joint is right about here. I drop that club down. You can see it's about to the middle of my feet. So those are 3 great checkpoints. If you get in front of a mirror, you can either do it yourself or have somebody help you out. Take an alignment stick, take a golf club, and just check those 3 checkpoints I just gave you. Now, how about a drill? How can I get into athletic posture every time? And again, when these new golfers come to me, what I do with them is I'll have them take their club and just put it on the side of their body, just rest it against their hip, and I ask them to put their hands on their kneecaps, and I want them very slowly to raise up until their fingertips just touch the top of their kneecap, and then they drop their hands out in front of them. And that'll get me pretty close, if not perfectly, to the position that I want to be in posture-wise to hit a golf ball. I'll just show you that very quickly from face on as well. So you see I start with feet are hip width apart, start with my hands on my knees. I'm raising up very slowly until my fingertips just touch the top of my kneecaps. I drop my hands in front of me, and if you have a club with you, you can bring that club back around, and there I go. A very athletic posture to strike a golf ball. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is ball position. We've got our grip. I'm in a good athletic posture. Now, how do I know where I need to put the ball in my stance given the different clubs that are in my bag? And I think the first thing to realize is that you should have different ball positions for these different clubs in our bag. And the reason is, if I laid out your clubs right here and I started with your sand wedge down here and the driver's on this end, so I just have them like they're on a rack at a golf store, just laid out, you can see they progressively get longer. And so I need to adjust my ball position for the length of the club. So what I'm going to give you is a baseline that I start all my students with, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, we go to a PGA Tour event, we see some players like it a little bit back in their stance, some like it a little bit more forward, but I think this baseline I'm going to give you is a good start, and then you can make it your own. You know, maybe you'd like it a little more back than what I suggest, maybe you like it a little bit more forward. So the baseline that I suggest with my beginner students is 7 through sand wedge. I like to see right in the middle of the stance. The 6 iron, which is a little bit longer, I'm going to put just in front of middle. By the way, middle of your stance is going to be belt buckle, buttons on your shirt, your nose. 6 iron, I'm going to play about a half a ball in front of that. 5 iron is going to be a half a ball in front of that. By the time I get to my hybrid, I'm up off my left ear. Fairway woods, I'm going to play up off my left heel. And then the driver, I'm going to get up off my big left toe. And that might be a little forward for some people. And again, make it your own, play with it. Where do you hit the ball most solid from? That's what we're looking for. So as far as a drill, or what I like to do when I'm teaching students, is I'll put an alignment stick down to help them aim towards a target. We're going to get into aim in just a second. Then the next thing I do is I'll make a tee out of it. So I'll put another alignment stick perpendicular to that target line, and then I'll just have them use that as a reference point to get the ball where they need for whatever club is in their hand. And when you get to the driver, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just have the student step on this alignment stick to make sure it's more forward. Now, one other way you can consistently get your ball position, and I grew up and I played high school golf with a friend who to this day still does this, is you can start with your feet together, and if I want the center of my stance, I'm going to step them out equidistance, and that ball's right in the middle of my stance. If I'm hitting driver, I can start with my feet together, again pointed at the golf ball, and just step my right foot back, and now that ball is forward in my stance. So, a good baseline there of where you should play the ball in your stance, or a starting point, and then a couple drills to make sure that you get it where you think you have it when you're practicing and playing. Okay, so last but certainly not least, we have alignment. And the important thing to understand is these are building blocks. Even though we're focusing on alignment right now, we need to have the other three as well, or else we would hit a great shot into the water. So if I had a great grip and my aim was poor, I just hit this fantastic shot that goes in the water or out of bounds. Now, to help people understand alignment, I like to use these alignment sticks. If you don't have them, you can use golf clubs. And I have two here, but if you only had one, there's a really important place that I like to see you have that one alignment stick or one golf club, whatever you're using, and that's on the target line. So if I was here practicing, I only have one, what I would do is I would put it on the target line. So my target is that yellow flag right down the middle of the fairway. Hopefully you can see it on there. And I've just placed that blue alignment stick on the target line. And I don't hear it talked about much. I talk about it often. But I think a very important skill in golf is visualizing the target line. A lot of people have a hard time seeing that. So practicing with this alignment stick on the target line makes it a lot easier for me to visualize it. Now with the other stick or the other golf club, we're going to call that the body line. And we're going to put that on the ground parallel to the target line. And the body line will be for my feet, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, my forearms. And this is if I'm somebody who tends to hit the ball straight, this is going to be, not much curvature to it, generally goes fairly straight, maybe a little left, a little right, but generally pretty straight. So I'm going to have my target line, and then I'm going to have a line for my body, or a body line that is parallel to the target line. So if I can get my feet, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, everything lined up, and I make a swing, and I bring the club back to the ball square and hit it in the center of the club face, generally that ball is going to go towards my intended target. Now I mentioned earlier that we see tour players and they do a little bit of everything. Some aim left, some aim right. And what they're doing is they're adjusting for their shot pattern. Some play draws, some play fades. So if you're somebody who plays a fade, and for a right-handed player that would be a ball that shapes from left to right, I would aim a little left to give it an opportunity to fall back towards the target, because we don't want the ball working away from the target. So if I'm somebody who fades the ball, I want to start it left and see it working towards the target, never away. And if I'm somebody who draws the golf ball, so that would be for a right-handed player more of a right to left shot shape, I would be aiming more to the right, again, to accommodate that shot shape. I want the ball to start out to the right of the target and come back to the target. I don't want to start at the target and work away. That's when a lot of bad things happen. So that's all well and good and a lot of fun, and it's easy to see when I can put these clubs or alignment sticks on the ground. But what happens when I'm on the golf course and I don't have the luxury of having these alignment sticks down? And what I do, and I teach to all my students, and I don't think I'm unique in teaching this, I think most teachers teach this, but I like my students to pick an intermediate target in front of the golf ball. So what they do, or I do myself, is I'll start behind the golf ball, and I'm looking for an intermediate target between my golf ball and that yellow flag out there. The only thing that's a little different from what I hear other teachers coach is I like the intermediate target to be within about 2 or 3 feet of the golf ball, so very close to the golf ball. And I'm looking for an old divot, a leaf, a blade of grass, something specific. And once I pick that out and I get in here, now it's very organized. It's very close to the balls. I'm standing over the ball. I'm not looking, oh, I'm aiming at that piece of grass 40 yards out in front of me, which in my opinion is just as hard as aiming at that yellow pin 150 yards downrange. So it's all very organized. I've got my blade of grass, and the process that I like to see as you're aiming or as you're walking into the shot is I like to see you aim the club face first, because we know the face is the most important variable for the starting direction of the golf ball. So I get the face aimed at my intermediate target. Then in my mind I'm visualizing that target line, just a line in front of the ball all the way back to the camera. And the last thing I'm doing is making sure my feet, my knees, my hips, my shoulders, everything is square. And then I make my swing, and if I present that club face square and I hit it somewhere near the middle of the club face, I see a ball that goes towards my intended target. So hopefully now you understand how to set up for a golf shot. We covered the grip, and I gave you a great drill if you need to adjust or change that. We covered posture, and again, you have an actionable drill you can use there. Ball position, and a couple ways to make sure that your ball position is where you think it is, whether you're practicing or playing. And then alignment, and adjusting your alignment based on the shot shape that you tend to see. If you've enjoyed this video, I have 2 more playing here right now that I promise will help you to continue to improve your game. And remember, please like, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment.